Rome was about to go into the toilet anyway. And at that time, there were about 5 or 6 other thugs vying for the throne of Caesar. So there were all these little compatriots, almost like the gangs, little parts of the mafia. Whose family are you with? Constantine saw Severus try to take over Rome. Severus, somebody say something? Oh, Severus, the very man that Constantine followed. Severus went across. No good. He watched Galerius try to cross the Pontemal and failed. At Pontemal, Constantine halted his army and he waited. Now one day during his wait, he had a dream. He saw flaming in the sky a monogram in Greek of the so-called Christ of the gospel. This is the story they're giving to you. In the flame of the burning cross, there were the words, "In hoc signo vinces," or "In this sign thou shalt conquer." Regarding this particular incident, Eusebius of Caesarea, the father of ecclesiastical history and Christianity, writes, and of course he got flavorful too, "At dawn Constantine set his artificers to work and had the sign made, beautiful with gold, gems. The Romans now call the sign the labarum. It was in the following form: a long spear. The spear of destiny is what the Illuminati during the time. Now this particular spear that Constantine made became the spear of destiny. This spear of destiny is what Hitler was looking for. When he began going across the Rhine trying to destroy everything, he was actually looking for this spear of destiny for the Pope. Because the Pope said that he would support Hitler if all the countries he conquered became Catholic. They shook hands over it and said, okay. Now, it was overlaid with gold, crossed by a piece laid over. On the tip of all was a crown, formed in gold and jewels interwoven, on which were placed 2 letters indicating the name of Christ, the Greek letter P being intersected by X exactly at the center. This was the first symbol of your Christ. That is the sign that Constantine took into battle to conquer. From the transverse piece which crossed the spear was suspended a banner of purple cloth covered with profuse embroidery and bright jewels and gold. It was a square form, and over it, beneath the cross, was placed a golden half-length picture of the emperor and his children. This standard he ordered to be carried at the head of all of his armies. This was quoted from a book called The Council of Nicaea by A.W. Dudley. Now you're going to get a lot of names of books, because I made sure that you could go and find out for yourself. So Constantine with his army and the labarum, held high for inspiration, crossed the Tiber and took Rome. But it must be remembered that before all this, in the so-called 2nd century, the Roman Empire had ceased to expand. In the so-called 3rd century, it crashed to pieces. So early in the 4th century, when Roman civilization was in the last stages of its own decline, there were as many as 6 imperial thugs fighting for the throne of the Caesars. One of them was Constantine. But Constantine had one advantage, one hook that he used to gain the upper hand. He discovered that the Christians, or the Christians at the time they were called, would fight for an emperor who favored their religion. They held strategic positions secretly both within and without the society. So he struck a bargain with the Christian bishops, reaped his reward in victory over his rivals, and for this success he made Christianity the religion of the empire and suppressed all other existing systems. It was not the gospel Jesus who established Christianity, but the Roman Emperor Constantine. And it was Eusebius of Caesarea who finished the job of writing his fraudulent history of Christianity. So who knows what might have happened to the cult of Christos had not Constantine adopted it as his state religion. The Roman and Greek scholars of that time mocked and dismissed this baby Jesus nonsense in the manger, and for that they paid with their lives. In the 4th century, Christianity rode to triumph. The victory was won, but not by Christian teaching. It was won by bloody swords, and religious wars that continued to disembowel Europe over the next 1600 years. These wars in Europe had not ceased. Look at Bosnia today. Bosnia today is a continuation of that Christian war. The Christian ministers of Rome thereafter were treated like kings because of Constantine. They were treated like royalty. Valuable gifts were made to the churches, and Constantine gave the palace of the Lateran to Sylvester, Bishop of Rome. This act was the beginning of the papal ascendancy. This palace was once the estate of Fausta, F-A-U-S-T-A, the wife of Constantine. Then began the systematic murder of these initiates of the ancient mystery system who refused to accept the new faith. Maxentius was Constantine's first victim. Maximian was his second. Licentius was his third. Galerius was his fourth. And you have to remember, as we go on, that he murdered his brother-in-law, he murdered his wife, and he murdered his mother, all of who would not support this new religion. Laws were instituted forbidding any other forms of worship in Rome. Churches were ordered built, and temples to the mysteries, which were actually schools at that time, at the command of Constantine, were put to the torch. In his work, The First Council of Nicaea, page 19, I'm giving you the pages, author Dudley writes, in all his orders respecting the church affairs, he acted like an ancient pope. This is Constantine. Heresies were cursed and condemned, and heretics deprived of their rights of holdings, meetings, and their houses of prayer were taken and bestowed on the Catholic Church. Their books were ordered to be sought after and destroyed. End quote. All persecution by the Church of Christianity, written on the pages of ecclesiastical history, began with Constantine and extends to the present day. The Christian emperor was the first to forbid free thought. You think about that. Big Brother ain't coming from no government. Big Brother has been with us for the last 2,000 years. In a group of writings called the Hibbert Lectures, a man named Renan translates, we search in vain through the collection of Roman laws before Constantine for any enactment aimed at free thought, or in the history of the emperors for the persecution of abstract doctrines. Not a single savant was disturbed. Men whom the Middle Ages would have burned, such as Galen, Lucian, Plotinus, all lived in peace, protected by law. Now, you got to remember, let's just take a little bit of prehistory before this happens. The light of the world had already been shining. Where was that? Chem, Egypt. Remember that all of the information, Rome was worshiping Isis, quote unquote. Rome was worshiping Krishna. These were all present. All were accounted for in Rome. Rome was essentially an open place where you can actually come and study, set up your own schools, and deal with your own teachings. There were at least 5 or 6 different forms of scholarship in Rome during that time. There were black emperors. They don't ever tell you about that. Septimus Severus was black. Constantine committed many atrocities, including the murder of, and I'm going down, Maximian, his wife's father. Basinius, his sister's husband. Licinius, his nephew. Sopater, his closest friend. Licentius, his other sister's husband. Crispus, his own son. Fausta, his wife, whom he suffocated in a boiling hot bath. She was his wife of 20 years. She bore him 3 sons. His own mother, whom he strangled with his bare hands. For all of this, the suppressing of free thought, the destroying of the ancient mysteries, the murder of all of his closest friends, and leading the church to victory over his enemies, he was canonized a saint. After his death, says Eusebius, effigies of this blessed man were engraved on Roman coins, sitting in and driving a chariot, with a hand reaching down from heaven to take him up. This is from a book called The Life of Constantine by Schlegel, Schlegel. Such is the legacy of Christianity, a religion based on bloodshed, fraud, lies, a religion founded by greedy fools and confirmed by an assassin, Constantine the so-called Great. The atrocities of Constantine were not just limited to those I previously mentioned, but he also bled to death his theopolitical rivals, threw the unbelievers down into wells, and caused countless to die in crusades to defend the faith. In the book titled The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, Gibbon